to Transformation in Trials. Welcome to Transformation in Trials. This is a podcast exploring all things transformational in clinical trials. Nothing is off limits on the show, and we will have guests from the whole spectrum of the clinical trials community. And we're your hosts, Ivana and Sam.
So natural cycles is 93% effective with typical use and 98% effective with perfect use. Perfect use meaning not having unprotected sex on red days. It's also intended for individuals over the age of 18 years old, and it doesn't protect against STIs.
Welcome to this episode of Transformation in Trials. Today we have two guests from Natural Cycles visiting us. We have Dr. Jack, who's the Medical Affairs Manager, and Sophie, who's the Global Marketing Director.
Hi.
Hey there, Ivana. Lovely to join you.
Awesome. And today we're going to focus on clinical research based on data science. But first of all, let's just back up a little bit. Jack and Sophie, can you tell us more about Natural Cycles as a product?
Of course, I'll kick it off. Natural Cycles is the first FDA-cleared and only CE-marked digital contraception that can also be used to plan or follow a pregnancy. Since it's an app, it's 100% natural, no hormones, and also no side effects. It also helps teach you about your own body and your unique cycle. And going back a little, back in the day, methods of calculating an individual's fertile window, they were called fertility awareness-based methods, and they involved using calendar dates and different biological parameters, such as basal body temperature, to basically manually chart one's cycle. And these methods were very labor intensive, and they required a lot of work. So at the end of the day, they were very hard to do if you didn't get trained basically from a professional. So there came Natural Cycles, Elina Berglund and her husband, Raoul Scherwitzel. They're both physicists, and they were at the time looking for a non-hormonal and non-invasive birth control option. And that's when Elina, she recognized that there's a gap in the market. So she started to develop an algorithm, and this then later became the Natural Cycles app, which is now available in Europe with the CE mark, and the US and Australia for everyone with a cycle.
And that must have been some kind of regulatory journey to get this kind of product approved as a contraception. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you had to go through to get there?
Sure. So the great thing about a digital product, and in this case a digital birth control, is the data that we're able to collect with user consent to sort of measure the performance of the product. So we were able to actually conduct studies on our users, and then we could publish them with sort of key opinion leaders in the field, so top academics and clinicians, showing how effective the method was to prevent a pregnancy. So we could then use this data in these publications to get our CE marking in Europe. And then in 2018, we submitted a large analysis of data to the FDA, who reviewed it and granted us our clearance through something called 510K. So this is a de novo kind of pathway, meaning that it was brand new, and we were the first to get that kind of clearance.
That is really exciting. Do you know what was the reason why they created this pathway? Was it inspired by you or other needs also?
I think obviously there are many fertility tracking apps on the market that tend to just sort of use calendar dates primarily. So there's definitely an awareness in the field that apps and tech in contraception and women's health are becoming popular. But since we had a high quality data set that was published as well, and we'd been able to perform academic studies that were peer reviewed, it meant that they were able to create this pathway because there were no other products, on the market that existed. So there was nothing similar.
Awesome. Well, can you tell us more about what kind of data is generated through the app, and how have you used that data for generating the clinical grade findings that you have?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we haven't got hours and hours, and I could talk sort of, if I was to talk about all the data that we're collecting in the app, there's just such a huge amount, which is really, really great for our users and the field of women's health. So, for example, when signing up, the user answers a series of what we call onboarding questions. So they enter information, anything from sort of the previous method of contraception that they've been using, standard parameters like their height and their weight, their age, their education, their relationship status. And that's just to name a few. And then obviously each day they're entering their temperature, and they're also able to log their mood, pain, menstruation, and other notes as well. And to build on top of that, so that's a huge data set in itself. And then we can actually send them in-app messages to collect data very, very quickly. Or we can send them a message linking to a larger questionnaire, asking them for more information if we need it. So, almost all of our data science team and lots of people at Natural Cycles are definitely nerds with PhDs. They come from an academic background, and as do the founders. So we really collaborate with leading global academic institutions and clinicians to design and execute research to the highest standard. So statistical significance in these huge data sets often occurs when we're making comparisons, but that doesn't always mean that clinical significance is apparent. So if we take our COVID vaccine research, for example, we had a paper published yesterday actually in the British Medical Journal. There were statistically significant differences before and after vaccine for people's cycle length, but clinically, this was less than a day. So we're, informing the academic community, publishing great research, and our users are the core of this. They're providing their data.
Well, maybe you can comment a little bit on how this is a departure from traditional clinical research.
Sure. Yeah. So, if we think about clinical trials, we often think about, huge sums of money and lots of staff involved to sort of get them off the ground, and then, continuing to run them over the course of quite a long period of time. It's costly, labor intensive, and takes a lot of time. Academics approached us, during the beginning of the COVID pandemic to say, can we just send a message out to users asking them when they've been vaccinated? And we were able to implement that in a number of days and begin collecting huge amounts of data with consent, on the effect of vaccine on menstrual cycles. So it's streamlined. Less work for participants, less work for the researchers, much, much bigger data sets that we can then analyze and look at the results.
Yeah, that is amazing. And the implications for clinical research can be huge if you already have people enrolled that provide data to you that you can just use to test your new hypotheses.
Absolutely. And it doesn't necessarily have to be directed at women's health. We could send them any question at all. And they can then take the decision whether to partake in a survey. So we do sort of research that's kind of, on the edges of women's health, but we can ask them absolutely anything at all if we wanted to.
Well, have you done any fun or interesting research that you want to share with us?
Absolutely, yeah. So I pulled some stats yesterday with our data science team, again in a number of minutes, and the research that kind of stood out to us, which we use to inform users. We use it in PR as well. So, for example, we noticed that if we take some numbers from 2020, the most stressful day logged in the US was November the 4th, and this was around the US election. And this was obviously a stressful time in the US to many of our users. And then we also found another peak in sort of stress on March 17th, 2020. And this is when COVID was really ramping up and lockdowns were coming into place. I've talked a lot about stress, which can be quite depressing, but now we can move on to sort of sex. So most log sex in 2020 was on Saturday, the 15th of February. So unsurprisingly, the day after Valentine's Day. However, we noticed in Sweden that there was no particular increase in sex around Valentine's Day. So Valentine's Day not appearing to be anything particularly special in Sweden sex-wise. And then, most log sex that we have is on weekends, and the most common day is a Sunday.
That is definitely information one might not be aware of otherwise.
Absolutely. And I think this is the kind of fun research that we do. And again, we can do it really quickly. And I think it's informative to users as well. It's something that you couldn't really pick out of data sets before.
Well, let's zoom in a little bit on your users. Can you tell us a little bit more about how do they interact with the app, and what is it that they can do using natural cycles that they can't do when using traditional contraception?
Of course. So Jack briefly mentioned, but the first and daily interaction with the app for a user is that they measure or sync their temperature first thing in the morning, and they input this data into the app. In return, they then get a daily fertility status. Green days, they're not fertile, and on red days, they are fertile, and therefore need to use protection or abstain to protect from pregnancy. And then with more interactions, we are a direct-to-consumer product, which is very beneficial because users are being able to access contraception just from the comfort of their phone, their mobile device. And they can also every day contact our customer support with questions and feedback regarding the app and the experience, and if they look for something else or they don't understand what's going on, they can talk to our support team who can help them. And this is also things that we always share internally, of course, privately, but to be able to optimize the experience for the user. So this is a daily interaction that is very powerful, I would say, in a contraception. As for traditional contraceptions has usually been prescribed, and appointments have to be made and booked with a GP or a gynecologist and HCP. I would say that's the most interesting thing with natural cycles, that we can interact directly with consumers at the time of when something happens.
That is very interesting. Do you know if the users that use your app, they actually consult their general practitioner before starting to use the app, or is it something that people start on their own accord?
So I think we would always advise that you speak to your healthcare professional when you're wanting to change your contraception. However, we know that a lot of healthcare professionals are very stretched with their time, and it's not very likely that they'll be able to go through all 17 or 18 methods with you in a 10-minute consultation, to find the best for you. So, what's great about sort of digital contraception and things like this is that you can can, take a test on our website to see whether it would suit you. You can trial the product to see if it would work for your routine. And I think, broadly speaking, we want to introduce contraceptive choice and the ability for individuals to actually make a decision, an informed decision about their contraception. So, we're able to provide a lot of information, before the user sees a healthcare professional, so that, they can help make the right choice.
Communication that we do, we tend to be we try to be very educational to teach potential users and individuals about not only natural cycles, but of course how it works and who it works for, and what kind of life you need to have this method suited for you.
No, makes sense. Do your users experience any adverse events with natural cycles?
So the major adverse event with natural cycles is obviously an unwanted pregnancy if you're using it in prevent mode. So natural cycles is 93% effective with typical use, and 98% effective with perfect use. So obviously there's always an opportunity there for users to, have sex on a day that's red when they shouldn't, without protection, and that can lead to an unwanted pregnancy. So in those situations, they contact our customer support. We're able to keep a track of those unwanted pregnancies as well to make sure that our effectiveness rates are in line with, what we advertise. And again, we're able to follow up with the user, keep in contact with them, use this data to feedback and support them, and again, try and optimize the product.
Bit about, we have a lot of listeners from the pharmaceutical space, and I'm curious, how could anyone thinking about doing a clinical trial use the kinds of data sources that you provide through your app? How could they incorporate that into building a new trial?
Absolutely. So I do still think that clinical trials are absolutely necessary, and the data that they provide for research is very high quality in a lot of cases. But as I said before, we know that they're costly and very time consuming. And historically, women's health has been left out of the picture in a lot of clinical trials for a whole variety of drugs. Specifically, the effect of drugs have not been sort of measured on menstrual cycles, and trials have normally contained the participants have been predominantly men. So natural cycles or similar digital forms of apps could be used on top of the baseline of the trial. Sort of like a digital platform to even enroll and consent patients, as that saves a lot of time and money. They can also be virtually reminded within an app to perform tasks related to the trial. So embedding an app like Natural Cycles in clinical trial, it not only collects sort of data, but also it reduces participant and trial time and administration. So I feel like they don't have to replace clinical trials necessarily. They can be used together. But then also the research that we've conducted recently hasn't involved a traditional clinical trial setup at all. So there's sort of three areas there that could be explored further.
Good. Now, I recently heard that you started a new collaboration with Aura. And I'm really curious, how would that change the user experience, but also the kinds of and amounts of data that you are going to be collecting?
Yeah, so we're since August working with Aura, which is a company that provides smart rings. And the whole partnership is based on trying to make a seamless experience for those looking to plan or prevent pregnancy naturally. And the Aura Ring is a huge breakthrough in digital contraception. It removes the daily measuring routine, and this will be a real game changer for a lot of users, because we have seen that one of the struggles, of course, with natural cycles is to measure temperature daily. And with the Aura Ring, you wear it when you go to bed, or all day if you want to, but for natural cycles, it's important to wear it to bed. And it measures your temperature trends while sleeping. So in the morning, you check your fertility status, which then has synced with the Oura Ring, and it's that simple. What's apart from being a more seamless experience, it also collects additional data, including heart rate and heart rate variability, and also movement. And this additional data means that we can investigate and adjust temperatures, taking into account, for example, alcohol consumption, which tends to heighten your heart rate, or a night where you got really poor sleep. And yeah, it's still early stages of testing, but we see a lot of potential in more measurements than only temperature.
Absolutely, but that will also give you more individual data points, as I assume that the Oura Ring measures continuously, or at least in shorter intervals than just measuring with a thermometer every morning. So it will generate more data for you.
Absolutely. So it generates a lot more data. Also, if it helps user retention and it's easier for users to use, that means that less users will drop off when they're using the Oura Ring, which also increases our data set size as well. And we're still sort of collecting data research that could be done there. And Sophie just touched upon some that we've been sort of exploring. But just another huge data set on top of the already huge data set that we have. Really fantastic for the field of women's health. Really, really exciting.
Sophie and Jack, could you tell us more about how you joined Natural Cycles? What did you do before? What are you doing now? What are you looking forward to doing in this product journey?
Sure. So I did a PhD in the UK many, many years ago now, specifically in sperm biology, which was very exciting to actually see things swimming down the microscope and think about the amazing process of fertilization and reproduction as well. And then I went to work in a UK fertility clinic on the front line as an embryologist. But, you know, working for the NHS was challenging. There was little time for research. And, you know, I could see so much potential, you know, the patients coming in and talking to them and you know, looking at all the techniques that we were using. So I really wanted to work in tech while still being a scientist and offering patients something that was missing in their reproductive lives. So yeah, tech's infiltrating our daily lives everywhere, and we're all very aware of that. And you know, the most exciting thing at Natural Cycles is hardware. So obviously the Oura Rings come in, and, you know, just thinking about everybody at the moment that's using, you know, smart watches, bands, there's just so much tech available and hardware available. So Natural Cycles really is kind of like a rocket, not just in women's health, in healthcare in general. So yeah, really excited and humbled to be part of this journey as it just, you know, keeps continuing upwards.
Yeah, and I joined Natural Cycles back in 2017. We had just gotten the CE mark, and we're on a mission to market Natural Cycles as a hormone-free birth control method. I came from a performance marketing agency, and I only knew Natural Cycles from, I had seen a few ads from a Swedish influencer actually, and some stories in the news, of course, but I was excited just because the mission was so interesting. I was, you know, I came from marketing like travel companies and retail stores, and I was looking for something more important. And I would say already the first year, or maybe even the first month, I realized that Natural Cycles was so much more than just marketing a product. It's really making a difference for the user, and I think that's what drives us every day. Seeing the cyclers' experiences and their questions, and how we even changed some of their lives. It's really incredible. So from here, I think it's a big challenge to find something more interesting and nice to work on every day.
Absolutely. Sofie, I'm curious, how could you maybe speak a little bit about how is it to market a product like Natural Cycles that's not a drug, it's not only a device? What are some of the challenges that you see when bringing it to market?
I would like, there are a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities, and I think we've learned just these past 5 years so much about how to market a product that's this complicated, whilst not being complicated at all. I think the biggest challenge is it's a certified device, and with that comes a lot of regulatory guidelines, and implementing all of these guidelines while still sharing what the good things about the app is, and how it works, and what it will help you with, and how you can use it, and what you can learn, and all of these things that comes with the app. You need to really find the way to include all of the regulations, but at the same time really market a very good product. So I would say it's a lot about testing and learning, really. We've tested a lot of different things, and we've gotten a lot of feedback on more or less everything that we do. And I think the golden line or golden rule is integrating education and a simple way of explaining something that sometimes seems quite complicated from a clinical and regulated space.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the geographical adoption of the app? Are there any differences in Europe versus the US or any other regions of the world?
Yes, there are a lot of differences, actually. And I think, the target market that we're looking for is that's pretty consistent. It's fertile women over 18 years old. But still, birth control is so different all over the world. Just looking at the UK, for example, everything is free. And looking in the US, it's different in every state, and it's also very political, which you have to take into account. You have to look at religion, which is also a big thing in contraception and birth control. So I would say it depends very much on where you market it, and our marketing looks very different in different countries. Also, I would say from the beginning, like the educational part of how much you really know about fertility from the start. I would say in Sweden, fertility awareness-based methods were like, many people have never heard of it, while in the US, for example, it's something that people know about. So it's different approaches in different markets, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, what would you say the future holds for Natural Cycles? Maybe both the near future, but also a little bit further into the distance future.
So, as I said before, I believe Natural Cycles to be a bit of a rocket in this space. Obviously, the Aura collaborations, just the beginning in terms of hardware. And I think, collaborating with other big players in the space in order to kind of provide non-hormonal options alongside all other methods of contraception, we really hope to sort of work alongside other competitors and companies so that choice is offered, a broader choice is offered to lots of individuals around the world. And then obviously from my side of things, the research, the research ideas and the academic interest is kind of overwhelming. The data sets that we have sort of ready to be analysed on all sorts of, conditions in women's health, from, endometriosis, miscarriage, we're all working in time. So yeah, definitely hardware, collaboration, and some great research papers coming.
Well, I'm curious about that. The academic collaboration and some of the research, and also you mentioned earlier that you just launched a peer-reviewed article, which is amazing. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about what kind of institutions do you collaborate with? How do people come to you? Do you actively seek collaboration opportunities?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was a case of taking our publications that we'd performed with small sort of internal publications that we then reached out to key opinion leaders in the field, asking them to review the data and come on board. So once we had a couple of publications, we were then able to contact, other academics in the field of women's health. And then slowly, for example, I know we're quite COVID saturated, but during the start of the pandemic, I got many, many requests because people knew that there were apps out there and wanted to know what data they collected and, what the possibilities were. So since then, external requests to us have increased quite dramatically. And when I go and talk at, academic institutions or at conferences, I'm approached afterwards to ask whether we could help with research completely unrelated to women's health, especially with the launch of the O-ring. So, it's an expanding field for sure.
That is also interesting. I mean, it's not only women's health. I mean, you also have quite a broad part of the population on the app that are women, but also just people with health.
Absolutely. And we recently launched our partner mode of the app. This was something requested by users over a really long period of time. If they wanted to sort of share unique cycle insights with their partner, so their partner would download the app and be able to view data that they gave permission for their partner to see. And then, this then means that we have a group of men now using a partner mode of the app. And we can perhaps, with their consent, ask them some questions about how they feel about, female contraception, but then also how they feel about their own fertility and their own journey. Again, it goes on and on. So we've just opened up another area there too.
That is really interesting, making contraception or fertility something that's objectively outside of just the woman's body, but something that's a common thing you have in a couple.
Often, Natural Cycles encourages individuals to sort of take control of their menstrual health and be aware and educated and help make informed choices. But then also, that's can be a lot of responsibility for some. So sharing that responsibility with a partner, them being able to view what days are fertile and not, should they wish, them being able to look at sort of symptoms of the cycle, PMS, or if the period's coming, that kind of shares that responsibility if they'd like that.
Well, I would also add to that with shared responsibility. I mean, Natural Cycles is a product that really is shared responsibility, because you need to abstain or actually use protection on red days. So it's something that we always try to talk about and educate about.
Awesome. Well, as we start rounding off, we always ask our guests the same question, and I'll address this to both of you. If there was one thing you could change about, and you get to pick the life science industry or the health space in general, what would that be?
I think this is really good. I was talking to our clinical trials coordinator yesterday about this, and she was agreeing with me that it's efficiency. And I think, clinical trials, bioscience, healthcare really needs to catch up. in terms of tech. Obviously, I'm biased because I work in tech, but then the leaps and bounds that we're making with digital platforms is just huge. So this could reduce cost, reduce a huge amount of time, benefit participants and patients. And, you know, I feel like we're years ahead of some sort of academic institutions and clinical facilities. And often they can't comprehend the amount of data that we're collecting in such a short amount of time at very little cost. And Sophie.
Yeah, I agree with everything there, and also the tech part. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But I think I would go back. This is maybe not even industry related, but I would go back to the education and really teaching from a young age. I know just myself being 30 plus, I've learned more these past 5 years about my own reproductive health system than I've learned my entire life. So go back to the beginning and really be open about all biological happenings in our bodies.
Absolutely. Well, if any of our listeners have any follow-up questions or want to learn more about natural cycles, how can they get in touch with you or Natural Cycles?
So a very simple, you can send us an email. So my email's jack@naturalcycles.com. And Sophie, do you have a preferred method of contact?
Yeah, mine is sophie@naturalcycles.com. So please send me an email.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was lovely.
Thanks for having us. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It was great talking to you.
You're listening to Transformation in Trials. If you have a suggestion for a guest for our show, reach out to Sam Parnell or Ivana Rosendahl on LinkedIn. You can find more episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or in any other player. Remember to subscribe and get the episodes hot off the editor.